What does a Scorpio do when her best friend in college steals her boyfriend while she's studying abroad? She steals him back, of course, a year later when her friend goes to Mexico. All of this happened in our 20s, and granted, your 20s are for fucking up your love life. But this one ran deep. It took a while to get over this one. So I was about to go away for a year to the University of Ghana for my senior year of college. In a few weeks before leaving, a good friend, nice guy, tells me he has feelings for me. And I realize I have feelings for him too, and we have this end of the summer romance that's really sweet. And the night before I was leaving, we stood together on his porch. He lived on this little side street in Northampton, and it was all dark and quiet, and we stood under the porch light, and we hugged and we kissed, and he said, "I will wait for you." So when I get to Ghana and I discovered that the whole university is on strike and there's no teachers and no students and all the dorms are empty and dark, I was like, okay. And when I realized that I hadn't checked the packing list carefully and I didn't have any sheets or bedding for my bare mattress, I was like, whatever, because I was in love. And I was psyched to be in Ghana, but I kind of couldn't wait to get home and start what felt like the first real relationship of my life. But the other thing about your 20s is that whatever is happening now is all that matters. So in a few weeks, I find myself down at the Performing Arts Center, and I'm taking drum lessons because it's like one of the only things going on. And this Ghanaian drum instructor starts coming on to me. And I'm like, he's got this adorable gap between his front teeth, and he wears this muumuu, and his hands just like fly on the drums. And I'm like, wow, this is really irresistible. So I write my best friend, Jessica, a letter. And we had been living together the whole year prior. We told each other everything. And I'm basically like, should I kiss the drummer? And this is back before cell phones. So these were like those thin little blue international envelope letters. It took like 3 weeks to get there and 3 weeks to get back. So it was like a month and a half later, and I get her answer. And she's like, yes, definitely, kiss the drummer. So I started having this little fling with this guy. And I'm like, Burke, that's the guy back home. I'm like, Burke's never gonna know. It doesn't change my feelings about him. And so I'm in Ghana, I'm just gonna do this. So another like month goes by, now it's like December, and I get another thin blue envelope, and this one's from Burke. And it's like, Jessica and I are together now. I felt so betrayed. I was so bummed out. I was so sad, but I was in Ghana, and I was kind of having the time of my life. So it didn't bug me much until I got home. When I returned to Northampton the following summer, I had to see Burke and Jessica everywhere I went. I would show up to a party, and they'd be there in their like matching vintage leather jackets. Jessica with her poofy hair and her wide hips, and Burke with his broad shoulders and Robert De Niro face. And I had to sit there while they talked about how they'd moved in together, and they were making homemade pesto and traveling to Mexico. And I sank into a depression, and I started dreaming about the three of us, the two of them in like a warm, cozy sleeping bag by the fire, and me like over here in the cold shivering. It was really doing a job on me. So I left Northampton, and I think they did too. And I started to get over it, but somewhere in winter of that year, I get another thin blue envelope, and this one's from Jessica. And somehow we had salvaged a little bit of our friendship. We still wrote letters. And her letter came from Mexico. And she said she was there on an extended stay by herself. And she was sleeping with a man there. As far as I knew, she and Burke hadn't broken up. So revenge was not the first thing to pop into my head. But a couple weeks later, it's now like the dead of winter. And I find myself in Boston visiting a friend. And yeah, I knew that Burke was living in Boston too, and yeah, I gave him a call, and I was like, hey, do you want to get a drink? And he was like, sure. So the next thing I know, we're at a little Irish pub, and we're both in like our wool sweaters. It's freezing cold and dark out. We're sharing a pint, and like 10 minutes hadn't passed, and I was like, Jessica's cheating on you in Mexico. And I kind of enjoyed watching him go through the stages of grief. He was like denial, hurt, anger. And then as soon as he got to acceptance, we went home together. And we picked up where we left off and we had this sweet little romance. But the other thing about your 20s is that you're really not ready for a serious committed relationship. At least I wasn't. It scared the shit out of me. So I sabotaged it and it ended. But it served its purpose because the thing about Scorpio revenge is that it's a circle. And if you deeply wound a Scorpio, somewhere, somehow, someday, that wound is going to come back to you. It's a law of nature. And we might fake apologize, but we will not be sorry.